Hi, I'm Amy. Thank you so much for joining us for Loving the Artist Within. A lot has happened since we met Shane over a month ago. She has released her book, Devine Disturbances. She has launched a Facebook Live campaign where she is tackling some really powerful questions. This week we enter part 3 of our series with Shane Maynor. And I have to say, we saved the best for last. This is a question that I brought up because it was kind of bothering me. I struggle with this as well. There's so many different things that I love to do, and I'm always told to narrow my focus and kind of be a niche, find a niche, and I have a really hard time with that. So I brought it up to Shane, and here's what she had to say. You're a poet, a painter, an author, creative coach, activist, educator. There's so many things that you're doing and that you do. And a lot of times there's a myth or a misconception that if you do everything, then maybe something is falling away, or maybe you need to narrow your focus. You need to hone into something and do that well. That's where you succeed. Could you talk a little bit about that myth, or is it a myth?
I would love to talk about that. I'm so glad you asked that question. I am very hugely passionate about, the term is called Multi-Potentialite, and it's for people that have multi-passions, and she wrote a book called Refuse to Choose. And it was just, it's so much confirmation how there's not a one size fits all when it comes to a creative's lifestyle. There are certain things that all creatives need, but on an individual level, if I niched down and I was like, okay, I'm only going to focus on one aspect that I care about, that would actually start to crumble away, because everything is so connected that everything feeds each other. And that's what keeps me going. I might be, let's say I'm in a classroom and I see a magic moment happen with the teen where they finally let go of like their dad's resentment or whatever it is, right? And I see that beautiful moment and I'm like, oh man, that is gorgeous. That is so powerful. That I am so honored and blessed to have been in that space to see that happen. Because all we're really doing is holding space. The team did that. I didn't do that, but I bore witness to it. That then becomes a poem. That poem then becomes a workshop. Like everything is leveraging everything else. Like everything inspires everything else. And if I stuck to just one thing, I would be miserable. It's not for everybody. But for artists and multi-passionate people who are dedicated to living a life where their art is their life practice. Like there is no difference between what you do, your creative process on a canvas, and how you live your life, to where it is just a sense of being. And like if you're practicing seeing beauty, drawing a still life, and you want that as a life practice to see beauty wherever you go, people who care about that, it works tremendously well to actually do all the things that your heart is calling you to do. That being said, you also have to have some help with structure and making sure that you're staying true to what is needed in the moment, whether it's what you need in the moment or whether the people you serve, what they need. So for example, like if you want to be successful and if you want to hold your commitments, you have to make sure you're a good scheduler. And if you're not, ask for help. I think especially multi-passionate people, that you need to ask for help when you get to a point. Everybody does. I think everybody has a problem asking for help. But if you want to do this for a living, if you've got dreams that you want to achieve, no matter if it's just one dream or if you're multi-passionate, you are going to have backup. Nobody gets successful on their own. Like, nobody. So whether it's a friend who can take some of the workload, or you got to delegate some tasks, get support, build your people, build your network that can be in there to help you tackle it all. But definitely don't fall under the myth that you just have to choose one, because it can tie together, it can feed together. And the amazing thing, I'll say this lastly, the amazing thing about me being a creative coach is I sometimes I can connect those dots for people. So there was a financial coach that I was sitting in session with, and he was talking about how he loved spoken word, but he's trying to build his financial coaching business, and he doesn't even know if it's worth pursuing right now. And I was like, why aren't you incorporating the spoken word into your financial business? I was like, if you kick off a webinar or a conference for your clients with a spoken word poem about being debt free, you've got them. You've got them. They're already invested in you. They're there because you're hitting all the emotional points with the emotional poetry piece. And I was like, incorporate it into your marketing. Your marketing doesn't have to be like, oh, come check out this debt-free program. You can add poetry into your copy and your content. And he was just like, his whole face lit up, and that's what I love to see. I love to see that. I love it so much. His whole face was just like, oh my gosh, you're right, I can do both. And I was like, yes.
I know, that is such a rewarding feeling. I mean, it really is. That's why we do what we do. I love that. When did you start to love the artist within?
I love that question, because I've never been asked that before, and I've been thinking about it ever since you ever since I knew that was a question. I think for me, I didn't really have a problem loving the artist within. It was all the other factors of myself, and I think it's because I never tried to be a perfectionist. I think I was writing from such a place of survival that I didn't really care if it was good. It wasn't really something that, like, oh, does this matter? I just knew I needed it. Like, I had to. Like, there wasn't an option. I didn't struggle with, am I good enough, or do people need to hear this, until later on in life. And then what I found was, you got to remember your why. You got to remember, why are you doing this? And I feel like a lot of artists, no matter what their craft is, when they get started, they're not specific on their why. They don't ask themselves that question. But that why will ground you. It doesn't matter if you're sending in poems to be published and you get rejection letter after rejection letter. Like, if you want to keep going and you want it to be a part of your life, you have to hold on to your why, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in what someone else is doing, and getting lost. Because as a creative, you actually have the opportunity to create whatever life you want to live. And we're all creative. And when we get stuck, I think that we feel less of an artist, or lesser than. But the creativity is still there. It's an endless well. It's just all this other stuff going on that is keeping you from getting to that well, and it's guilt, it's shame, it's fear, and I didn't really face those factors until later on. But definitely holding on to my why helped me remember and reconnect with loving, the art form within, and how this benefits me and others, and remembering that that's the most important thing, and that it feels so good to create. Like, it just feels good,
So as an artist and as a creative, I mean, you're right. When we're not creative, when we're blocked, when we don't feel like we're getting our art out there or producing it ourselves, it's like we're not human anymore. It's like we're not a person anymore, because our identity is so connected to that creative seed that's within us. And when it's not growing, when we're not watering it, when we're not providing sunlight, when we're not feeding it, then it's like our garden does not grow and there's nothing to harvest.
Yeah, that has been a struggle for me as well, because especially, but more so with activism. What I do got so wrapped up in my identity that I completely lost my identity, and it was scary there for a while. Like that was really, really an eye opener to me, because I'm like, it doesn't matter how much I produce, it doesn't matter what good acts I do if I'm not okay with just sitting with myself and just existing. Like, I think of, it was probably, I want to say like 2014, when like the whole like self-love started to become a word into society, and like that movement started to happen, and I remember being very resistant against it. And then it took me a long time to be open and realize, oh wow, yeah, I'm not loving myself. Like I'm loving what I do, and I'm proud of that. But I have to be okay with, like, if especially the pandemic that hit, like if you aren't able to go out and do the good work that makes you feel fulfilled, if you haven't grown like a large following on social media, then you are just like showing your work in the dark, and like you have to be okay with that. And I thought that I had made great strides in like loving myself as a person and not just like what I do, until the pandemic hit, and I realized, wow, I've been leaning so much on the audience is energy, that now I'm left alone with my art form and my poetry. uh and it was uncomfortable, and I started questioning myself, like, and it was weird, and I was like, wow, I have been codepending on an audience reaction for so long that I've not gotten intimate again with my work. So instead of trying to do a bunch of virtual shows like right when the pandemic hit, I went back and got intimate with my work again, because I felt like that was something very important that I needed to remember and cultivate. But yeah, that was a big eye opener, and I think it's a life practice. I think it's like, you don't just wake up one day and like, I'm perfect now, I'm good. Like, these are never going to be an issue again. Like, I think it's a life practice, and I think it's finding the joy in the practice, to where you get excited when these things come up again, because you're like, ooh, what can I uncover now? like
Yeah.
like I remember how I felt when this first came up for me and how I feel now. So I'm excited, because once I work through this, my own personal stuff, I'm going to feel even better like after that. So, but yeah, like everything that's going on right now has really pushed a lot of artists to face um, how they really feel about their work. Like, how they feel, not how the audience feels, not how whoever's buying your product or whatever it is. Like, how do you feel?
A couple of things came up during that. One is, you know, it's always a journey, it's always a process, and you always have to go back to it and figure it out and, go through it. I equate it to going to the grocery store. It's like when you run out of milk and you like creamy coffee, then guess what? You got to get up, you got to go to the grocery store, you got to get the milk, you got to come back, and the milk only lasts for so long, and then you got to keep refilling it.
Love that analogy. I think that's totally true. Totally true. And I think people forget too that in order to be an artist and a poet or whatever it is you do, you also have to live a life that cultivates that. And artists' needs are different. Like you also need to cultivate these experiences that will fuel your inspiration and your joy as well, so that you can really tap into that. I don't believe that inspiration is something that just strikes. I really truly believe in my heart it is a constant current, and you have to train yourself to reach in and out of it.
To ride
It's
it. Yeah,
always there. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like artists can breathe a sigh of relief now that we know that we are multi-potentialites, and that's okay. I think being a multi-potentialite is gonna be one of my superpowers. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much, Shane. It's been such a wonderful month, and all of these series have been super enlightening. And definitely check out her book, Devine Disturbances.